All right, so it looks like time to start. So I'm gonna get going on this. Welcome, everybody. My name is Kimberly Rosworth, and I'm here to talk about George Washington as a model executive. And I am a high school teacher up in Onaway, Michigan, which is a little itty bitty tiny. It's up here. Um, and I teach the presidents as part of civics. I do not teach American history. That is not on my course load. So I focus a lot on the presidents of the founding, obviously, because civics curriculum. And I was able to go this past November to Mount Vernon on one of their residential programs that they have for teachers. And I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the session. But if you're able to go. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here. Of course, I do that and I get the dreaded internet is unstable message. So fingers crossed that I don't get kicked off. My screen will share without the loading screen for how long? All right.
It's
Can you
up.
see
You're
it?
good.
All
Yes,
right,
you're good.
cool. All right. So, as we may know, George Washington really sort of set the game up for what it meant to be president in the United States. Being the first person in the job, he sort of had to know that a lot of what he was doing was going to uh, set a lot of precedents for all of the presidents to come. Probably the one that everyone is the most familiar with is him stepping down after 2 terms, and that sort of being the tradition, although not really enshrined into law. FDR, of course, during the World War II era, ran for a third and then a fourth term. And then Congress came back and got the amendment going in order to kind of enshrine that into law in the Constitution. So, this lesson plan specifically that with the Genet affairs, Citizen Genet, of the idea of how much power the president should have regarding foreign policy. And I got this for a couple of years in the same way using Rap Battle from Hamilton. And then when I attended the Teacher Institute at Mount Vernon, a while back and kind of tucked it away but forgot about it. And then I thought, oh, they have one that has to do with Citizen Genet. This would be really kind of perfect. So, how I would start this out with students, and I have switched it up a little bit by adding in the game, is that Mount Vernon offers a lesson plan that goes with each of the different scenarios in the B. Washington game. The first is a background reading, and they're going to get a lot of this in the game as well. But this piece will sort of give them a really good background into, let's see if I can get that to pull up here. A background into what was going on in the US, what was going on in the world at the time. And so that's linked right here in the presentation, where you can grab a hold of it, or you can go to the Mount Vernon website and brief reading, about 2 pages for the students. And then really, it ends with this: if you were George Washington, how would you respond to the situation? And so it gives the students their 3 choices that they would have. And these are going to be the same 3 choices that they're going to have in the game. So what I throw out at my students is that, and I see there's a typo in here there, I'll just fix entire background information. So a couple pages goes by pretty quickly. And then I ask them to sort of pre-vote on what they're going to do. Are they going to enforce neutrality? Are they going to honor the treaty with France? Or are they going to punt to Congress and ask Congress to come up with a really clear policy? And so that usually sets up some really good, very animated discussion, because once they have them all pre-vote, I throw it out there and ask for some volunteers. Which one did you pick? Why did you pick it? And that's usually the biggest winner. But there are always some students that do one of the other two as well. And so it promotes like a really nice discussion within the class. So if we go back to the slides, then I also then would have this graphic organizer that I would hand out to students for them to use while playing the game. And this just helps them to kind of organize their thoughts a little bit. Oh, and of course, my internet connection is unstable. Everyone cross their fingers and toes that I can stay on here. Super slow to load because my internet is unstable. So we're just going to smile and we're going to love technology because it is so fantastic and it helps us so much without causing any stress at all. All right, so this is eventually going to pop up. Gives them a space for each of the advisors to Washington to be able to, whichever that they speak to in the game, they're going to be able to get some information, and they can jot down any important things that come out of those discussions, just so that they can remember them later. All of the events, starting with France and the United States signing a treaty of alliance, and then ending with Louis XVI losing his head in France, and kind of leading to everything that was going on in Europe at that time. So once they've pre-voted, once they've gone through everything, that will get us to where we are actually going to play the game. And so this is where I'm hopeful that many of you are going to be able to be on two separate devices. Really, really easy for you to be able to play. And we're going to play all the way through the game. It takes about 15 minutes. It's pretty active all the way through. And it works really good in the classroom if you have any kind of a projector that you can project what I'm going to show you on my screen, and then students can have whatever devices that they have. So if they have Chromebooks or they have their own devices, they can even play it on their phone, although it's doesn't work really great on a phone, but it will work. Best thing to have would be Chromebooks or iPads or something along those lines. Move out of that. I realized I closed my window that I had open for this, so let's pop back in there. So you can see when you pull this up that there are 3 different options that are down at the bottom that are going to allow you to host a game or join a game. So as a teacher, you are going to want to host a game. And then this is the code that you would share with students. So for you to be able to play, you want to go to play.bwashington.org. And then you're going to enter in this code, the 4BS7FK. So if you've got, again, like I said, if you've got another device that you can use, or if you want to split screen it, just open another, you can open another window and then just kind of switch back and forth between them, because the main part of the story is going to come through here on my screen. So I'll give everybody a few minutes to get logged onto that. Again, you want to go to play www.bewashington.org. And then join game. And once you get there, you will their code that you see on the screen. There are a couple of different games that they offer through this. There's actually 4 different scenarios throughout Washington's, I don't want to just say presidency because some of it is pre-presidency, when he was at the command of the Revolutionary Army. So again, your website, play.bewashington.org. And then you can punch in the code 4BS7FK. Okay, so I'm going to click start on this. The good thing about it is that once you start, it's still going to show the code here on the screen. You can see down here on the bottom. And so you can see what your 4 options are here. We have Battle of Second Trenton, Newburgh Conspiracy, the Genet Affair, and the Whiskey Rebellion. So we are going to go to the Genet Affair here. Maybe. Well, maybe we are. I am not 100% sure why it's not going through.
Kim, have you officially started the game? Because mine just keeps saying waiting for the host to start the game.
No, I'm trying to, and it's stuck.
Okay, I just didn't want to make sure I didn't mess up.
No, because it'll start playing actually the video, like kind of the intro video will play on my screen. For whatever reason, it's not. I'm not sure why it's not letting me click through it. I'm gonna stop sharing just for a second and see. I know that we played this. I played this when we were virtual, and we did it this way, and it worked. So,
I like because the code's very much feels like Nearpod.
yeah, it sort of acts the same way as that. Okay, I'm gonna try ending and hosting. I'm gonna have to try again, so it will probably be a different code. I'm not sure if it's my internet that's being rotten or what's going on. Okay. All right, I think I got it to load. So if you put in that other code, I'm sorry, you'll have to exit out of it and put in this new code. I'm really sorry. I'm not sure what was going on with that other time, but it wouldn't let me go in. So you can just back out of it, and then it is PB3 PSD down here on the bottom of the screen. So again, I'm going to keep the code on there, and so you can join in while it goes through the introductory information.
Welcome to the B. Washington Interactive Theater. Soon it will be your turn to test your leadership and decision-making skills in a crisis Washington faced during his presidency. Here's the situation. It has been 10 years since the United States won its independence from the Kingdom. George Washington is now the first president of the United States, and Great Britain is a key trading partner. But all is not well on the European continent. France, whose alliance was vital in our victory over the British in the American Revolution, is now in the midst of their own revolution, which is growing increasingly radical. French revolutionaries declared an end to their monarchy, beheaded King the public. Kingdoms throughout Europe, fearful revolution will spread to their own countries, have declared war on the French Republic, including Great Britain, who is our most important trading partner. The French appeal to America for help. The two nations have a treaty dating back to 1778 during the American Revolution, which calls for mutual aid during times of war. Under the terms of the treaty, France sends their ambassador, Charles Genet, to the United States to recruit Americans to attack and capture British merchant ships operating in the Atlantic and Caribbean. The situation sets off a heated debate.
Ambassador, enthusiastic for the cause, is already recruiting our citizens to fight. We are not prepared at this moment to engage in a war. We lack guns, ships, and trained officers, not to mention our Indian problems on the frontier.
We all agree we cannot fight a general war, but we need to support our Revolutionary War ally and brothers in liberty.
American citizens have no business supporting the French in this anarchic war. We think in English. We must maintain peace with Great Britain to keep our customs revenue from any risk.
The Secretary of Treasury is only looking at this from an economic standpoint. As Secretary of State, I must remind you of our obligations. Our 1778 treaty with France promises mutual aid in case of war.
Our treaty with the French was made with poor Louis XVI, who no longer has a head. France is in a state of chaos. There is no head of state. They are at war with all the monarchies of Europe. Our young nation cannot afford to be dragged into this maelstrom.
There are those in your administration whose heads are itching for crowns, coronets, and mitres.
Enough.
Issues a proclamation stating America's neutral position in the war between France and Great Britain. His decision sets off a fierce public debate. Some claim the president has overstepped his authority. They argue that Congress should make the decision, while Ambassador Genet and his American privateers continue to attack British ships. You are about to step into the role of President Washington. As President of the United States, will you take a hard line and enforce a strict policy of neutrality? Will you allow Ambassador Genet and his American privateers to continue to attack British ships under the terms of our treaty with France? Or will you ask Congress to set a clear policy? Just like President Washington, you will have to make your decision under pressure as the continues to evolve. You will be able to seek advice from various advisors who represent people and sources President Washington would have consulted. But be aware, they will offer contradictory opinions and you will not have time to hear from everyone. Just like President Washington, it will be up to you alone to decide how strongly you agree or disagree with their advice and whether they will impact your decision as the President of the United States. Now is your chance to be Washington. It's your
So it should be continuing for you on your device with the information and the ability to choose which people you want to hear from. And it is limited in time. So I'm going to sit back and be quiet and let people play.
I just popped back in, Kim. What are you having issues with?
Okay. I don't know if we are. It should be like in the game right now for, although it looks like it's still saying waiting for host to start game. So
That's what my phone says too. It just says waiting for host to start game, and it's got a picture of Washington crossing the Delaware.
right, with even with this new code.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
the screen that shows here is just black. It doesn't even have that on there.
My two, and it seems to be stuck. So I'm gonna click back over and we'll go through the rest of the.
Yeah, that shows up well.
Okay. Yeah, it might just be too much.
I grew up north, so I understand how internet works out there.
I know, and we invested. We're supporting Elon Musk and Starlink, but it's not great for Zoom apparently.
Yeah.
We'll just continue through this. I am going to try to keep my camera off because I think that'll help a little bit as well. So once we would have played, I usually stop the video right when it gets to the end. It gives them the opportunity to vote on which of the three options that they decided on. And I usually try to stop it right there and we'll have a discussion again. Did anybody change their mind? Did talking to the different people change your mind? What did they say? Good takeaways from what the historical figures have said. It's really nice with the historical figures because what they are saying are documents. So then I let them go through and vote. We look at what Washington actually did. So we'll give them the update as to what really happened. And then also we'll show you like the historical results for that particular game. So everyone who's ever played it, whether they played it online, like we would do in my class, or people who are able to visit Mount Vernon in the education center there. They have a big theater room where they've got a big screen, great sound system, and there are several stations that have touch screen. Make their decisions on and choose who they want to talk to and whatnot. So then once we finish the game, that has sort of set us up to look at the primary documents. And so I will bring those up so that you're able to see those. So it's quite a few excerpts. I think there's 7 total from with the treaty in 1778 and pulling out just some information. There are some questions that go with each of the documents, and I would have students, depending on how familiar students are with reading and analyzing primary documents, you may want to put them in pairs or triads or small groups. I generally put my students into pairs or triads just because some primary documents in the prior year in world history, but not quite as big of documents and not quite as in-depth. So there are several pages here. They've got the excerpt, and then there are, as I said, some analysis questions that you can use. You could change the questions, absolutely. I've put these together, but feel free to change, adapt to however you want to use those with students. Finishing out of the Neutrality Proclamation. So I would have students work through these documents, which usually takes a pretty good amount of time because it is a lot of reading and a lot of thinking. But after they have the experience of playing a game, they really have a lot of prior knowledge that they can use to really sort of dive into these. And then that would take us to what would be our assessment piece that I use with this. And assessment piece was around cabinet battle number 2 from Hamilton. My students love listening to different songs and things from Hamilton. I like to use them as intros. In the past, I've used this as an intro with these documents, and I felt like the game was a much better intro because it really catches their attention. This catches their attention too, but I kind of changed it around to work out as so we would watch cabinet battle number 2 or listen to it. All of that's going to really depend on what your school's policies are, because cabinet battle number 2 does have some language in it. There is a school appropriate version of the song that I was able to find that kind of skips all of the words that are not appropriate for school. So you would be able to utilize that. It's on free, and then that is going to be linked right here in the presentation. I would go out and show it, but I'm a little nervous now with all of the kind of electronic snafus that we're having here. So I'm going to skip over that and then go to the lyrics. So again, the lyrics are also school appropriate. So anything that was an inappropriate word is just flagged with some asterisks. The kids probably know it all the way through with the bad words, but we know that's not appropriate for many school situations. After we've listened through it one time, then I would hand out the lyrics and we would listen to it again. This one is really, really fast paced if you are familiar with it. And it's easy to miss some of the things that are being said during this rap battle. So all of the lyrics with who is talking at each of the different parts. And you'll notice that I've got them double spaced. And the reason why they are double spaced is once they have listened to it twice, I have them go back to the hop out onto the internet, and they are going to go through this cabinet battle and find parts of the documents that they just read that align with different lines in the lyrics. So they are going to pull all of that information together and show whether or not Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote an accurate historical song about this entire issue. So they've got to go through and pull it. So they have lots of by this point, my students are usually pretty familiar with writing on primary documents, kind of talking to the text. They'll throw questions in there, and then we'll kind of culminate that with another class discussion as to what did they find, what did they decide, what did they determine, based on all of the documents that they read, the activity with the game, and then viewing the video. So that's a little bit shorter. About another 10 minutes with the game. I'm really sorry about that, but you know, best laid intentions and the internet just gets in everybody's way. So I do have a survey on here that if you want to capture this link and pop it into your into another browser window and take this survey at some point. This is partly just proof to Mount Vernon that I did my training that was required for visit. It will be very helpful for them just to understand, you know, what kind of interest that you might have in other educational opportunities for Mount Vernon and whatnot. So I'll leave that up there for just another minute. And then I will go out and talk about the Mount Vernon teacher programs just a little bit. So this is the webpage that information. Applications are currently closed for their summer programs, which are going to run from June to August this summer. But they do also offer some opportunities in the off season. As I said, I went in November of 2021, and it was a Wednesday through Sunday program. So it of those days we spent from scholars from all over the country that were experts in different parts of Washington's presidency and Washington's legacy. We had one of the historical interpreters from Mount Vernon come in and do a presentation for us in the persona of one of the enslaved people living at Mount Vernon. That was probably one of the most powerful things that I've ever seen. We had of time actually up at the house. We were able to go up there before it opened to the public. And we were able to be there after it closed to the public on a couple of opportunities. So the one morning, there were quite a few of us that went. We watched the sunrise over the Potomac, which was really like a really great opportunity. We did the house tour, but it was a much more in-depth house tour than you can get on the public tour. So we went into the basement where there's a lot cool. And they took us all the way up to the third floor of the house, which is not a part of the public tour either. And we got to see a lot more of the rooms and really get a lot more of the history of the house, of George, of Martha, and of all of the people that over time had come to visit them there at Mount Vernon. Sort of free reign on the grounds. And, you know, really just a lot of really great information. The different instances of having themes. So if we scroll down here a little bit, the themes that are for this summer, which are kind of the same themes that they do, George Washington and the founding, Washington at war, Washington as a businessman, slavery at Mount Vernon, leadership and legacy, which was the session that I attended. And then they're doing one also that focuses in on Martha Washington and women of the 18th century. So they really are pretty broad in scope. Many different things, not just history. There were some ELA teachers that were there, as well as a couple of elementary teachers. So it was a nice, interesting mix of people. So who can apply? They kind of go through the information on that. All of the costs are covered. And then your travel to get to Mount Vernon is reimbursed, but it generally is probably not going to be reimbursed fully. It's a set formula that they have depending on what state that you're coming. Had I flown out of Detroit, I think that mine would have been fully reimbursed my flight, but I live 250 miles away from the Detroit airport, so I flew from a little bit closer. And so I just took on part of that cost, knowing that I was going to have to pay a little bit extra, but it was definitely worth it to me. They put you up in the Alexandrian Hotel in Alexandria, which is a real brief bus ride to Mount Vernon every day, back and forth. All of the meals are covered. You come home with all kinds of resources, and they gave us a big, a swag bag and all kinds of stuff. I highly recommend it though, because it really was an excellent professional development on site. And just to be able to have that sort of access to the Mount Vernon mansion and the grounds is sort of a once in a lifetime experience. I think. I don't feel like it's something that people generally are able to get. Okay, I'm gonna go back to this screen again, which has the survey link on it. comes up. There we go. The survey link on here again. If I would really appreciate it if you would fill out this brief little survey here. I think it's, I don't know, 15 questions or something like that. And then I want to open it up to anyone else for questions. There is another Google form on here. I know they did give us certificates that I can send. So if you're interested in having a certificate that you completed this PD, it's a nice Mount Vernon certificate that's got a picture of George Washington and a picture of the home on it. You can fill that out and I will fill out and email you your certificate of completion once I get notification that you have filled it out. So really sorry that none of the video things were working in here. I probably should have stayed at my school rather than being at home to do this, but it is what it is, right? So I'll open it up. If anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer them. But definitely if you get a minute, go to the game on your own time. You can play it through by what it would be like to play it in the classroom with students. Just that you would be projecting the majority of the game and then the students would just have access to choosing which advisors to speak to and then voting on what their result would be at the end.
Kim, I'm going to Washington at War in June. Is there something that you did not do that you wish you would have done while you were in at Mount Vernon or in the area?
Boy, I like tried to squeeze every drop of of everything that I could. I definitely would say if you've never been down to the wharf, to go down there. That was after, like, we sat up on the porch, of course, and watched the sun come up, but then a group of us walked down to the wharf and just kind of got a much different perspective from down there, being able to look up and see the house. And I had never been all the way around all of the grounds before. Just I have only gone there with groups or taken students, so you're pretty limited as to what you can do. So I just explored as much of the grounds as I possibly could. I walked miles and miles and miles when we had the opportunity. I guess the one thing I would have liked to have done, but because I was there with the group and didn't have my own transportation, is I would have liked to have gone to the working, like the grist mill and the distillery. I think that would have been really interesting, but it's off site from the main part of Mount Vernon.
Great, thanks.
Yes, Lindsay, I see your question in the chat. Are we able to get access to the materials you use for this lesson? I can, if you want to drop your, I can email them to you. I'll email you the presentation because everything is linked right in the presentation. I realize I don't have a link to the presentation in it, so yeah, I will, as soon as we're done, I will email that to you tonight.